I brought it back. And we kept it.
You're funny.
Mr. Mayor, we are live.
Right, thank you. So today is August 25th, 2021. The time is 6:06 p.m. and I am calling to order the Baldwin City Council special meeting. Chief Deputy City Clerk, can I get a roll call?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Danny Damian,
Here.
Councilmember Veronica Garcia,
Here.
Councilmember Paul Hernandez.
I'm going to make a motion to excuse Councilmember Hernandez. Can I get a second? Any objections? All right, Chief Deputy City Clerk, continue.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem Alejandra Avila.
Here.
And Mayor Emmanuel Estrada.
Here. Just give me a second. I'm going to bring up the agenda. All right, and then at this moment, I will open up public communications. If there's anybody looking to speak, now is the time. Not at this moment, I will move to close public communications. And I believe we are handing it over to MIG and Ron Garcia on our housing element update. City Clerk, do you want to note that?
Yeah, just for the record, Councilmember Hernandez joined us at 6:07.
Perfect. Thank you, Honorable Mayor, City Council and staff. Tonight, we'll be going continued conversation, a study session from our June 23rd study session on the housing element update and our downtown specific plan. Tonight, we will be going over a presentation. Genevieve Sherrill from MIG and Jackie Martinez from MIG will be going through a thorough presentation and discuss density and community benefits. And again, as a continued conversation from what we had at the study session on 6/23, and highlight some of the comments that, not some, but highlight the comments that were given by the city council in addressing density within our downtown specific plan and also meeting our state RENA requirements. So I'll now hand it off to Genevieve Sherrill of MIG.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Honorable Council. Can you hear me okay? Just make sure
Yes.
it sounds great. Okay, thanks, Ron. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Great. So thank you again so much for having me here tonight. I'm excited to talk to you about a lot of the same things we talked about last time and really build on that conversation that we had back in June to talk about the housing element and some options for how we can achieve the state regulations that are in place for all cities to have a compliant housing element. So I'm going to go over just a little bit at the beginning what the housing element basics are so that we have a little refresher of what we talked about in quite a bit of detail back in June. And then we'd like to do a little bit of some of it's a little fun. We'll have a little guess the density game, but do a little discussion around density and what it actually looks like on the ground when we look at some examples. We'll also look at some examples around the San Gabriel Valley from a planning standpoint of what other cities are allowing. And we'll look at the existing regulations in Baldwin Park so that we have a firm understanding of kind of what's on the ground allowed today, and look some at the downtown specific plan and those draft regulations that you saw before you back in the spring. We have a couple of ideas for how that downtown specific plan could be revised in response to the comments that we heard from the council, and we'd like to discuss through those options with you tonight. We also heard from you last time about some additional policies that seem to have some interest from the council about how we could meet our housing goals. So we want to bring those back again after that discussion around the downtown to discuss those in any more detail. And then we'd really like tonight to hear from you where you would like staff to move forward to achieve the housing goals. Because we do have some very critical timelines that are associated with the housing element. And I'll go into that right now. So the housing element is a little bit different. So the housing element's a state required element or chapter of the general plan, but it's a little different from the other chapters of the general plan. So the general plan covers a lot of different topics: land use in the city, circulation, parks and open space, noise, a lot of different topics. The housing element's the only one that has a very clear statewide legislative intent that really drives the housing element rather than local preference. And the state has said, the legislature has said that the availability of housing is of vital statewide importance, and it's up to local and state governments to use their powers to facilitate the improvement and development of housing, to make adequate provision for housing for all economic segments of the community. The housing element is pretty unique. It's the only one that requires a review and certification by a state agency. Sometimes the safety element does too, but this one also has an update schedule. So these housing elements are required to be updated every 8 years. No other element of the general plan requires these periodic updates. So we're nearing the end of the, or we're nearing the deadline for adopting a new housing element on that 8-year cycle. So this housing element period will cover 2021 through 2029. The update is due on October 15th, and that means it must be adopted by City Council by that date. However, the law does allow for a grace period of 120 days. So that puts us out towards February, I suppose. This is a critical deadline to meet, because if you don't meet this deadline, you will be required to update your housing element every 4 years instead of every 8 years. So while housing elements are very fun, it is a cost to be incurred to the city to update every 4 years. And in general, we want to set our path forward for the next 4 years and be able to stay on that 8-year cycle rather than the 4-year cycle. Sorry, I misspoke. In addition to penalties for missing that deadline, cities also face potential litigation if they don't have a housing element that is either adopted on time or complies with all of the state laws. So it's one of the longest parts of the government code for general plans is in the housing element. So we really need to comply with all of the different laws. Otherwise, potential litigation, the city becomes ineligible to receive a variety of different grants. And again, that 8-year cycle goes away and it becomes 4. We talked about this a little bit last time too. You may have heard the term called RHNA, the acronym. This is the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. And this is a housing target of new construction that each jurisdiction throughout the state of California receives. That state agency that reviews the housing elements, the Housing and Community Development Department, or HCD, they determine what that housing target is for our region. So our Southern California region has a target of constructing 1.3 million new housing units over the next 8 years. So this is, the state recognizes that we are in a housing crisis and that our targets are reflective of that. Then our local or our regional government agency has a methodology to allocate all of these units to each jurisdiction. So each jurisdiction can plan independently for how those targets can be met. The RHNA for Baldwin Park, so that housing construction target for the next 8 years is 2,001 housing units. So just a little bit of context on the housing element for you there. But tonight we want to talk about density and how do we get to those housing units that we're targeting? How do we get to 2,000 new units in our very built out community of Baldwin Park? So we're going to talk about density and how units look on the ground, in fact. So when we talk about density, we usually say it in terms of dwelling units per acre. So this is how many individual dwelling units. So this isn't, you know, a 3-bedroom apartment is the same thing as a studio apartment as far as units go. It's one front door. So how many front doors can fit on an acre of land? So if for single family houses, that's generally around 4 to 10 acres of dwelling units per acre of land. Townhomes can get more dense. Those are about 10 to 20 units to the acre. And then apartments and condos and mixed use developments, those can be 20 units to the acre, 30, 40, well above that. And we're seeing much higher densities throughout California as a result of housing demand. So when people hear that term density, though, it can be a little scary for folks. And we often hear concerns about too much traffic, too little parking, or too many cars on the street, noise in general, and other concerns that folks have about that term density. When people hear density, they may not think of some of the other things that might come out of having a slightly denser community. Along with new housing developments, we can have more walkable neighborhoods where folks have opportunities to be active and include lots of different activities for folks to do and make a place for our neighbors to live near us. Also, these new developments have the potential to really enhance our streetscapes with providing much more incentive for local retail to locate and really bolster our local mom and pops with the folks that they need to come and patronize their shops. Now, the draft Downtown Baldwin Park specific plan includes a lot of these concepts. It really thought pretty carefully about how to put those concepts into a plan to really encourage housing projects and new mixed use projects to fulfill some of those goals of the good sides of density, of bringing folks to the streets and to our local businesses. And this also helps us meet the RHNA. So it's important for us to recognize that not all density looks the same. One number of 40 units to the acre can look very, very different. Importantly, because good design matters. If a building is well designed, we are much more able to see that it fits in with the community rather than sticking out like a sore thumb. So there's a few things that really go into making that density number happen. Most critically is that size of the units. So if you can think about a box and how many studio apartments or 1-bedroom apartments would fit within that box versus a 3 or 4-bedroom apartment and how many of those would fit within the box. You can see that you'll fit a lot more studios in that space than you would 3-bedroom apartments. So that's one of the key factors that can influence density. Also, parking on site. Often parking drives development design. How many cars you can actually fit and the circulation pattern of getting cars into the space can really often drive the design. And the number of spaces of parking could be taking away a space that could be housing, in fact. Also, open space and setbacks, while these are critical and really enhance our community, they can also contribute to reducing density in certain locations. But fundamentally, what we perceive as this is a too dense project might be based solely on the design, and we don't like the design. So I want to go through just a few examples of what different densities look like in different buildings around California. So here's a couple of examples of townhome developments. So these are side-by-side townhomes. Each has an individual garage in the back. And these are achieving about 21 or 24 units to the acre, but still 3 stories. Here's a couple of examples from Southern California on the left and Oakland on the right at 32 units to the acre. So here we're seeing, again, mostly a 3 maybe 4-story structure. On the right, they're achieving 34 units to the acre because there's a blend. There's certain parts that are more dense and there's certain parts that are less dense. But you can see the quality of design really makes a difference of what we feel comfortable with. Here's a couple examples from Pasadena and South Pasadena. So the example on the left is a craftsman style development. It's 3 stories, but it's achieving a 40 units to the acre density. And this has a very similar look to the townhome developments. It steps back from the street. It has an engaging street front, but it's able to achieve a much higher density. On the right, this example is Mission Meridian over in South Pasadena, and they have achieved a density of 40 units to the acre. Over here on the right, they have some more craftsman style developments, and it's blended throughout the site with more dense developments over here to achieve a 40 unit to the acre overall density there. Here's a couple more examples from Pasadena, and so you can see 2 buildings of the same density. These are achieving 50 units to the acre and 4 stories here. And this building is 3 stories for the most part, with just a little bit of an accent here on the top. So in 3 stories, they're achieving 50. Here it's 4 stories. So again, you can't necessarily look at a building to know its density just by, say, the number of floors even. Here's a couple more examples. 55 units to the acre here in a 4-story structure. And more Spanish style, we see a 55 unit to the acre. So these are very different design styles, but both really have some articulation that adds to the building facade, and some step backs in this one that it can also enhance that feeling of kind of lessening the bulk of the building. 2 more examples here. This one on the left is going up to almost 60 units to the acre in 3 stories. They don't even touch a 4th story, but they're really able to achieve that. These are largely studio apartments. And over here, this is in Pasadena, over at the Westgate Apartments. These are 70 units to the acre in a 4-story structure. And a couple of examples from Baldwin Park. Over here on the left, this is right here by City Hall, the Metro, called Metro Village, I believe. I used to call it the Rome development. But 72 units to the acre, actually, they were able to achieve because they were affordable housing and had a density bonus. And you have a new project that is proposed right now, the senior housing development called Central Metro Place. They're able to achieve a 74 dwelling units to the acre density in a very, 4-story building, not going up to 5 stories here. They're able to achieve that higher density. These are largely studio apartments reserved for seniors of lower income. So just to kind of challenge ourselves and think about this again, and what all this means and what these numbers are, if it's not alphabet number soup. If you look at this building and just kind of, we're not going to take a poll, but just kind of think about what do you think this density is of this building? You've got some 4-story structures in the back. You've got 3 stories up front. Goes down to 2 stories over here. So there's a little bit of a blend of density. It could be any one of these densities, 24, 34, 46, 50. Just kind of think in your mind, take a guess. This one's only 34 units to the acre. A lot of these are larger units. So they're able to achieve kind of a lower, comparably, density to some of those other examples that we saw, because we have some larger units and some kind of easing down of the height. This example here is more of a townhome style development with 2 to 3 story structures throughout here. Just kind of think in your mind, if it's lower density to you, does this look like it would be more like 30 units to the acre? This one's only 20 units to the acre. This example here tends to feel a little bit more higher massing, 4 stories here, but some good articulation and setbacks from the street. Somewhere between 32 and 52 units to the acre. This one's 41. And here, this example feels kind of similar to the one we saw just on the previous slide, 4 stories again. This is an affordable housing development down in San Pedro. It's actually achieving 56 units to the acre. So again, it's really hard to tell just by looking at the outside of a building to know what that density is. Again, it's really important to know it's important to encourage and ensure good design. So looking around at our neighboring communities, just to know what context we're sitting within, here's a couple of examples of other transit-oriented and downtown-specific plans of some of our San Gabriel neighbors. Over in Monrovia at Station Squares South, that specific plan has been in place for about 3 years and has seen a lot of developer interest. That has a density of 78 units to the acre and is located by the Gold Line. Duarte Station specific plan, this is the one located right by their Gold Line station, has a maximum density allowed of 90 units to the acre. It also sets a minimum density, a threshold where you have to achieve at least 40 units to the acre, and allows for some additional height as well. El Monte has a TOD specific plan as well that's been in place for about 4 years, and this one is a little bit analogous to Baldwin Park because it is also a Metrolink station. And this one's a little bit different. It has a by right allowance of 25 to 35 units to the acre. And then there's an option to go higher, but only through something called a Development Opportunity Reserve. And this, or DOR, as you can see on the screen. So with a Development Opportunity Reserve, you could go up to 80 units to the acre. And what that means is that they've set aside a structure so that there's a certain amount of units that can be built. And to achieve these higher densities, the developer must provide some what are called community benefits. So things that the community has already identified are of critical importance to the community that they would like in exchange for that higher density. So because when you get higher densities, there's ability for higher profit potential from a private developer. So this Development Opportunity Reserve or community benefits provides an option to really gather that profit potential back that's associated with an upzone and give it back to the community through amenities that are intended for the community. The Covina Town Center specific plan has been adopted for about 2 years now. That one goes up to about 50 units to the acre. If for mixed use, it puts an incentive for mixed use with a higher density allowance. And the Uptown Whittier specific plan goes up to 50 units to the acre and about 6 stories. So just a little context from our neighbors. Locally, we have in place our mixed use zones. We have a mixed use 1 zone, which is largely in the downtown, and we have another mixed use 2 zone. And that applies in a couple different locations up on North Main, that mixed use 2 zone. The mixed use 1 zone has a topped out density of 30 units to the acre. The mixed use 2 also goes to 30 units to the acre, but only on larger lots. So if your lot is more than 20,000 square feet, you can achieve a 30 units to the acre. So this is an incentive for folks to consolidate lots with their neighboring lots to try and create a really quality development. The adopted downtown specific plan, so that plan that's already in place, the existing, has a similar allowance. It has 2 zones within it that allow 30 units to the acre through that mixed use 1 zone and 20 units to the acre through the RG zone. And that's going up to about 50 feet as well. The draft downtown specific plan, which this council has seen and commented on, just a reminder of what those standards are that were drafted. That one has kind of 3 different zones within it. Edge, kind of the outer edge of downtown at a 40 units to the acre. The kind of middle core, or the middle ring, I guess it is 50 units to the acre, and then the core right downtown at 60 units to the acre. There's a couple of nuances with the height as well in the draft as proposed. Looking at the edge, thinking about the context of some neighborhoods nearby, it looks at dropping the density, which is currently allowed at 50 feet, to kind of soften those edges to up to 35 feet. At the corridor, again, reducing height to 45 feet, and in the core going up to 55 feet. And this is kind of important that 55 feet in the 5-foot increase is actually pretty important to really facilitate mixed use, because at the ground floor, mixed use to be in a retail space, it really wants 15 feet. So in order to achieve 1 story of commercial and 4 stories of residential above, 55 feet is the appropriate height to actually allow that to happen without having spaces at the ground floor that are really not conducive for commercial development, and then can end up sitting vacant if they're not designed in the correct way. So those are the drafts that we've seen so far. The current boundaries of the downtown are shown here. This is under the adopted specific plan. The proposed specific plan, here are those different zones. The edge is the light orange. The dark orange here is the corridor, and then the downtown core is in the purple. So we heard from council a little bit of feedback from that already, but I wanted to pause here. We have some options to show you moving forward, but I just wanted to pause and see if there were any questions about what I've already covered there. I'm not hearing any questions. Mr. Mayor, did you or anyone on the council have any questions, or is it okay if I move forward?
Yeah, if any council members have any questions, definitely now's the time. I currently don't.
Okay, I'm going to go through a couple of options then.
Mr. Mayor, sorry.
Yes, Councilmember Hernandez.
Thank you, sir. Quick question. When you talk about the community benefits package, where is the, say, like a bid improvement district fall within that?
So I think to develop a business improvement district, that could run in tandem with the community benefits kind of arrangement, where a bid could be formed for the downtown to really kind of just work as its own tight little kind of chamber of commerce. But then you could have a community benefits agreement that the bid could help formulate what those community benefits are and help manage some of them, like some of the streetscape improvements. And the community benefits agreement could pay into funds that the bid could then manage to implement some of those improvements. And I'd like to talk about community benefits a little bit more too. So I have some more slides on that.
No problem. I'll wait till then. Thank you.
Okay. All right. If no other questions at this time, I'll move over to a couple of changes to look at for the downtown that we'd like you to consider. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about community benefits because that came up from the example. So that development opportunity reserve or a community benefits plan, it's really a mechanism that requires those projects to give back a little bit of what would be the profit potential from that increase in density. So understanding what the community wants as critical amenities that will really enhance our community, understanding what those are and what the trade-offs are for that increase in density, so that the developments can give back to the community. There's a variety of different topics that could be covered under what types of amenities could be provided. The existing specific plan has some community benefit structures built within it. If you provide a certain amount of open space, public open space, you are able to achieve an additional density bonus. So you're able to achieve a bonus per each 1,000 or 2,000 square feet of public open space. There's also a public art incentive where you can get a bonus for providing public art on site. These haven't been accessed or used that much. It's quite hard, of course, as you know, to find available space to add parkland or plaza land. And the city does have a public art percent for public art, so developers are paying into that already. So those two benefits haven't really been used in the existing specific plan. So when the draft specific plan was written, it kind of thought through those and removed those two options and really tailored in some of those benefits that the community might want right into the design. So it has requirements for public realm improvements and economic development initiatives. It just kind of requires that within it. So no additional bonus is provided for providing anything. Now, however, we can rethink that always. We can think about different community benefits that could be required for densities that you might not necessarily feel as comfortable with, but maybe you'd feel more comfortable with if there was an exchange where the community is able to receive a common community benefit as associated. So we wanted to just present you with a couple of ideas for these types of things. So there's a lot of different things, like I said, that could count towards community benefits. Certainly housing resources are near and dear to my heart, but they can be a variety of different things. We can have, tenant rights clinics, variety of services, as feasible, local preference for affordable units if there's not certain types of federal funding associated with it. But we can also have our developers targeting our local residents for the units, especially where they are affordable or below market rate. And we can have them marketing to even a list of folks who sign up who say that they're interested to receive the first notification of these types of units coming online. There's options for workforce development, job training. You can also have them contribute directly into funds to source kind of larger projects that an individual project might not be able to achieve, but together a few projects could achieve a much larger community benefit project. A variety of cultural arts, putting in a cultural arts facility, either within the project as a ground floor kind of use, youth art programming. If there's a desire to really enhance retail or a grocery store, some type of specific use in a certain place, you could put priorities for that. Transportation improvements along the streetscape, but bus shelters, bike lanes, car share, and of course parks. We don't want to leave them out, even though they're really hard to achieve. To be able to create a space for a small community garden could even be an option. Or a public plaza as well. So we have a couple of options that we'd like to discuss tonight about how the specific plan could be revised. And we'd like the council to think about considering how to tier those different densities within the downtown to have additional discretion for the city council or the planning commission to review some of those higher density projects moving forward. So we could consider tiering the reviews so that at a tier 1, that could be the 40 units per acre, for instance, staff level review, whereas tier 2 could be reviewed by the planning commission or the city council, or tier 3. And then at tier 3 or the highest density projects, the city council could review. And at those higher densities of tier 2 and 3, those community benefits could be required. So here's a kind of a visual of that same thing I just described, this option A, where we talk about, the existing downtown specific plan has 3 tiers of density right now, going up to 60 units per acre. So at a tier 1 at 40 units, this is allowed by right with no community benefits required. But as soon as you trip up into the 50 units per acre, this could be planning commission or city council, and they should include at least 1 community benefit. Here, getting up higher, they would need to include more community benefits, choosing from a list that the city prioritizes, that the city council can prioritize which is most important to them, and ask them to choose from that list. So we showed you a lot of numbers back in June about how we could meet that 2001 number. So this was the proposed downtown specific plan, and that gave us this end number is the most important one here. It was a surplus of units. So this said that we could achieve that RHNA of 2000, and we had almost 800 extra space. We had 800 extra units to meet the RHNA. And so it's important to have some buffer in our target numbers and not just target out and say we have exactly enough space for 2001. There's laws in place through the housing element that really require us to have a buffer. That's because there's what's called the no net loss law, where if a project comes in on a site we identified in the housing element, and for instance, it's a mixed use site, and instead of building housing on that site, somebody comes in and builds a retail store, then the city needs to prove that it still has enough other sites to continue to meet the RHNA. And that also happens if we identified that they could be towards the lower income RHNA, but they come in at moderate or above moderate. The city will need to find additional sites to meet the RHNA. And so that process, in order to avoid that, HCD guidance is to have a fairly significant buffer of at least 20% towards that RHNA. So this option, which would allow up to 60 units to the acre, but only if they provide at least 2 or 3 community benefits. It does meet the RHNA and the city's grant requirements that are associated with the drafting of the downtown specific plan. It has the benefit of encouraging and supporting housing opportunities, and has that community benefits agreement in place to exchange for that density in higher density spots. Option B to talk about tonight too is to remove that 60 dwelling units to the acre tier entirely. So this would allow up to 50 units to the acre in the downtown specific plan. This would also have a requirement for community benefits at that 50 units to the acre. And the Planning Commission or City Council would have review authority over that to see what the community benefits are that are associated with the project and the project in general. This is able to achieve quite a decent buffer as well with this change. We're able to really head towards our goal of having a good buffer around that 2001 target housing units for the next 8 years. So again, this has kind of the same positives as option A, but it doesn't quite enhance the demand that potentially 60 units to the acre could support, of really driving development interest in particular. Now, option C would be the third option, to remove both the 50 and the 60 to the dwelling units to the acre tiers and really look at just 40 units to the acre for downtown. And in addition, the city could also look at hiring a design firm or a professional to review projects as they come in, to really support that high quality design that the city council is looking for, to make sure that it fits within the context of the community and the design objectives of the downtown specific plan. With that change, we are still able to achieve a buffer towards the RHNA, not as much, and but we are still able to meet the RHNA through these sites that we've identified for the most part. So it does meet the RHNA at a pretty basic level. There's a few proposed projects that have gone away, so that number actually does drop. So, we have a few proposed projects in here that have gone away. So this is probably more like in the high 300s now, I think. So it's not a huge buffer. We're maybe not even quite at 20% here with this option. So it does meet the RHNA and the grant requirements, but it's pretty tight. It's at quite a basic level. There is somewhat less opportunity to really drive development interest. But we also discussed with the city council, there are a lot of other options around town that the city council had some interest in exploring housing in or changes. So that option also sits out there as well. So those are a couple of ideas that we'd like to hear direction from you, some discussion around these. And I'm going to pull up a digital whiteboard for us to talk through some of these options and what the city council's thoughts are on these options, or other comments or questions that you have around tiering the densities and the densities that you're most comfortable with.
Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Garcia.
I'll kick off the discussion. Genevieve, can you go back to the map of our downtown, the specific plan area?
Sure thing. The proposed specific plan area?
Yes.
Mhm.
So let's stick with this one. So here we have the core represented in purple, right? And then we have, what is the orange?
The darkest orange is corridor. So this right along Ramona, really that kind of spine other than the core is the corridor, or 50 units to the acre.
Okay.
And the lighter orange is the 40 units to the acre in the proposed, in the current draft.
And what are we referring to, the yellow or the lighter orange?
The lighter orange is called the downtown edge.
Oh, the edge. Okay. Okay. So my thoughts are, I like the tier. I like that at the core, we would allow up to a certain amount of units per acre. And then after that point, we could allow a range with council approval and or review, and in exchange for community benefits. And then as we go to the corridor, again, I like the tier. So, and then as we go to the edge, it becomes less dense, right? Couple of thoughts for me. We could allow for the 40 dwelling units per acre across our specific downtown area. And then in the core, allow up to maybe 60, 70 dwelling units per acre, but with council review and approval. And I like the community benefits. In other words, I like the model that El Monte followed with the TOD, where they have 35 to 80 dwelling units per acre, and they upzone for community benefits. So kind of following that thinking, I would be in favor of, let's say by right, 40 dwelling units per acre, and then allowing up to, I don't know what, let me just throw out a number just for the sake of the conversation, 74 units per acre, because that's what we allowed over here at the senior housing. So in that range of 40 to 74, that's where it would require city council review and approval. And I like the idea of the community benefits too, so that we could have some transportation elements or some park elements, or something along those lines. And then in the corridor, I could see us again doing like the up to 40 by right, and then maybe up to 50 with council review and approval. And then on the edge, maybe just keeping it at up to 40. Those are my initial thoughts. What do you guys think?
Yeah, so can you go back to the first map? So that the dark purple area, why was that changed into a less denser area? So in my opinion, I think my kind of rule is if I have to kind of break my neck to look all the way up at the building, then that's way too high if I'm standing next to it. If we're gonna, in my opinion, if we're gonna allow any density, it would be specifically in that area, and then across the street where there is the old public works yard, where there's room for that type of thing, and it's not in the middle of anything. I would personally, I would want the opposite of what is being proposed now. So like I said, if I have to look up, if I'm at a crosswalk and I have to look all the way up to see the end of the building, that's too high. I think at the last meeting, we did had a more general sense that we didn't want we didn't want downtown to be too dense. I think the goal was to meet our arena numbers. 74, in my opinion, is very, very dense. Also considering that if a nonprofit or an affordable housing developer comes in, they're going to be able to use that density bonus, increasing it by a wider margin. So, and with the community benefits, my only concern is that there's I think we've had community benefit type of incentives in other contracts, not specifically to housing, and we're not able to keep up with them. So that's another concern. And I don't think it would be worth, us giving them density. For parks, we're already getting our Quimby fees, and for public art, we're already getting public art fees. So we are getting fees for this already as it is. My view is to just, hit our arena numbers, but kind of do as much as possible to save the landscape of the city in general, even the downtown.
Mayor,
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I have to agree. I don't like the density of the downtown area. I want to be able to hit the arena numbers, keeping in mind that we're also looking at other locations to possibly build affordable housing or such. We're trying to the other areas that may be rezoned so we can continue building. I don't like the density in the downtown. As long as we hit the arena, I think 40 would be my max that I would be comfortable going with. And still, to me, it's a lot, but in order for us to meet arena, I think 40 would hit that number.
So did we look at potential overlays? I know that that's kind of something that I brought up when I met with Ron. So that way there's a possibility of just building elsewhere without completely doing this whole ordinance change.
Sorry, so are you referring to the downtown or elsewhere in town?
I mean, just in general, right? Because we're doing the arena numbers.
Yeah, so that's always another option that we can explore too. We were going to talk about some of the other options after we kind of talked through downtown. We wanted to bring back some of those other options that you wanted to explore as well.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yeah. So before I hand it over to Councilmember Garcia, that's kind of, I think that's where I'm at. I don't know where the rest of our council is, but I think we should just kind of leave it across the board. Once we start allowing, commissioners or council to get involved in independent projects, I think it becomes a little bit more difficult. So I would say leave it across the board. I think, protect, with SB 9 and SB 10 coming in, I think there's a lot of concern for density in general in suburbs and cities like ours. So we should be doing as much as possible to make sure that we, protect our landscape. But yes, Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you. So I have a question for Ron and for Ben. The 3-story project at Ramona and Badillo, I think. That's the newer project. It's right next to the wine or the brick building. Yes. You know what is the units per acre there?
It's townhomes.
So those, from what I remember, it's approximately 24, 26 units per acre.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and again, it is a townhome. It was a townhome story. attached.
Right, 3-story.
Yeah. So
And
those are 20.
then the senior project that's being proposed right here behind City Hall, that's 74 units per acre?
That is correct. And that's 54, that's a total of 55 units, 54 senior apartments and
Mhm.
1 manager's unit.
Okay. And then the Rome project was 72 units per acre.
Correct.
What else? What else do we have here? I think that's all the new development. Okay. So the reason why I mention these is because, like you, I think the consensus here is that by right, we don't want to go beyond 40 units per acre. I think that's what we're all saying. We haven't heard from Councilmember Damian or Councilmember Hernandez, but I think we're all saying that 40 units is it's the right number for us as far as comfort level. If a developer, wanted to come in and propose something similar to like the senior housing that's going in behind us, or the Rome project, the affordable housing, we're looking at the 70 units per acre. And in that case, what I'm saying is, going off of what is being presented to us tonight, is we allow projects at the 40 units per acre, but we consider projects that go beyond 40 units per acre. So that if a developer comes in and says, I want to build affordable housing, but I can only make it work if it's 60 units per the acre, that this council would consider that proposal. And that's what I'm suggesting here, is that, like you, I'm with you on the 40 units per acre by right. Anything that exceeds that can come to us, and then we can, determine at that time whether the project makes sense. So, I think the consensus is definitely 40 units from what we're hearing. But do we also want to make ourselves available and the possibilities available to, let's say, like an affordable housing unit, very similar to the senior, very similar to Rome, that would go, let's say, 70 units per acre?
So, Councilmember, in those situations and in future similar situations, if the developer was proposing 100% affordable housing, they would be able to, they would submit the project to the city, and they would be able to take advantage of the state density bonus law. So they could achieve those higher densities actually, despite the fact that our plan would have limited them to the market rate projects. Those affordable projects could exceed our downtown densities. So we would not be able to, we would essentially have to consider them. Yes.
In that case, would they be required to own the property?
Yes, and this would be in the case of them acquiring property and owning it. If there was a case that we own the property, then the city owned the property, then we would have more say in
Right.
everything, in all aspects of the project.
In the project, okay. So in that scenario, because I think what we're hearing is we're okay with the 40 units per acre. If a developer came in wanting to use density bonus, would it be by right at that point?
If it's not, depending on the affordability, of what they're taking advantage of with respect to the state densities, whether it's very low, or moderate, yes, they can. I mean, that ability is there.
So they're allowed, based on whether it's very low, or moderate, they're allowed a certain density bonus.
Correct.
And that would be by right, even if we capped it at 40 acres.
That is
per acre.
Correct.
That is correct.
Well, that's good for us to know.
So just to add to what the director was mentioning, is really the heart of this is when you get market rate housing, where the density starts to really kick in and the community benefits because of the state density bonus laws that are afforded to those affordable housing developers. There's that other piece too with the inclusionary housing ordinance that we'll be presenting a study to, when we get affordable housing, when we get for market rate housing, if it is the council did move forward with an IHO, those projects, market rate housing, would be required whatever percentage of those units be for affordable units, whether that's very low, or moderate. So that kicks in as well. So that's something to also take into consideration if it is that the council moves in that direction.
Ron, I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't
I'm
quite.
sorry. So the heart of the discussion, the densities that Genevieve was proposing, is really looking at market rate development in the downtown that don't have that flexibility of the density bonus.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
So
you were saying about IHG and,
so the inclusionary housing ordinance that a study is going to be presented to the council on the before the end of the year,
Mhm.
on what the appropriate percentage would be if it is the council moved in that direction to implement an IHO
Okay.
ordinance, then any market rate housing development that not only in the downtown, throughout the city, depending on how many units proposed and the affordability, they would be required a certain percentage to provide to affordable units.
Mhm.
That would be a
Right.
separate matter though, from
Yeah,
the
it's not
downtown
before
and
us tonight.
citywide.
Right.
Okay. So, does Genevieve have let's say it was, let's just say because of the conversations that have happened here on the council, it sounds like there's more, and there's greater favorability to low income. Let's just use that as an example. If there was a developer that came in to our downtown area, and let's say we capped the units per acre at 40. If the developer is now taking a density bonus for low income housing, what does that density bonus look like? What's the increase? Do you guys know?
That's a very good question. I don't have the matrix in front of me.
Okay, I just want to get an
That
idea.
gives you the breakdown of based on the affordability.
It could double.
Yeah, and roughly
Like double?
It could
Yes.
double roughly.
Yeah.
I mean,
So it
If
could
it's
be,
100% affordable,
if it's 100%, yeah.
okay,
but you could probably be able to achieve just about what you're getting in the two projects that you have downtown that are affordable and have been constructed or proposed.
okay. Okay,
Because those were achieved with specific plans because they couldn't have achieved
Right.
those densities otherwise. Mhm.
yes. And there's a reason for that, and we got into that earlier.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Hernandez.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Genuine, and staff for walking us through this. I support option C as is. Again, we're talking about market rate products in our downtown core area. And what I appreciate is two things. One is it, under tier 2, it has our planning commission, which then requires a city council approval. One of the reasons for why we add commissioners to the individual residents to the commission is for them to provide, insight and input as to what should be developed, designed, and built in our city. So I would not want to take that away from them because, again, that's one of their main core functions. And along with, the city council approval. When it gets to tier 3, this is again one of the responsibilities as a council member to look at how a product might look like in our core area. And if it doesn't make sense, then I suspect the majority of the council would say no. So with that sense, I support option C as laid out with the 60 units. Not necessarily the 70 units that my colleague, Councilmember Garcia, has mentioned, but I do appreciate the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, at least for the down as it's been laid out in our downtown area, because again, by doing that, it gives them some flexibility to look at what it is that we're looking to do, along with the community benefits. I have seen community benefits help communities, over time, if there's a reason for why something's not working, well, then we should fix it. That's a simple solution in my eyes. I know where, other areas have used it for workforce development, and it's been very successful in various communities and various plan developments. So those are just an example of, as I see as a community benefit, whether it's workforce development, tenants, tenant rights, workshops, not only for our downtown area, but for the rest of our city. So we can, as a council, we can certainly come up with a great list of what those community benefits could be as we, move this along. But and then as we think about, the potential, IHO being overlaid, that might be something where, if we do have a market rate developer who wants to, develop in our downtown specific area, that's something that they're gonna have to take into consideration. And depending on, maybe they want to do a tier 2, not necessarily a tier 3, but that will assist them as they work towards making their numbers work for them. Because again, for those type of projects, we're not providing them any type of assistance or financial assistance on those particular projects. But they may ask through our specific plans and the density bonuses, as you've outlaid before, that may make sense for them to be able to pencil things in. So that would be my preference is to do that. Again, having a downtown area that's a mixture of low, affordable, very low and moderate residents, along with market rate residents, is a good blend, especially within buildings that no one knows the difference. And again, as it comes back to the Planning Commission and our City Council, that gives us ultimately the final say as to what we allow to move forward or not. So I see this as a template and as a roadmap, not necessarily as an all be it document, because again, under the tier system, that comes back to the Planning Commission, which is why we have chosen and selected individuals to be on that commission. They're making decisions on behalf of the city, and same with the City Council. We were all elected to make decisions on behalf of the residents, and that's again one of the roles that we have. So I would suggest if perhaps we can look at the tier 1, 2, and 3 as it's been proposed by Genuine and staff. Thank you.
Councilmember Hernandez, may I just clarify one thing? I think you said option C, and this is my fault because I think I ordered them incorrectly, in that the denser option is A. So that the option that it would include the tiers would be A. But I think we all heard your intent, but just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. I don't see the options A, B, and C's in front of me, or all of it. So I just remember as C being that. But thank you for that clarification for all of us. Thank you.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes, Councilmember Damon.
Yeah, and I was even thinking of going up to the 50 units per acre. But to be honest with you, one of my biggest concerns is the parking. That's always been a big concern for our residents here in Baldwin Park. I mean, even in the outer skirts of downtown. So for me, even if we were to add an additional 10 or 20 units, if we make that 50 or 60, we're talking about adding an additional 20, 40 vehicles. And we don't have the parking. Yes, we have the Metrolink station, down the street, and we've got, bus stops everywhere. But realistically speaking, a lot of our residents in our community do not take the Metrolink station, and they do not take the buses. They're just not big on public transportation. It would be great if many people would, but they don't. And so that's just going to continue to congest our area with more parking issues. For me, we have to meet the RENA numbers. We have to meet our timeline. I know that we have to stick to a minimum of 40 units per acre. I would feel more comfortable sticking to the 40 units per acre. I take my colleagues' comments into consideration where, would come back to either council for approval if that project makes sense. Hey, let's give them the extra units. But at the same time, my biggest concern again is the parking, and not until we're able to resolve the issues that we currently have in our city with the parking, I don't know if adding more units to our downtown area is going to be beneficial. So for me, I would feel more comfortable sticking with the 40 units per acre. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, council member. So I think we've all shared our thoughts. And then staff, I don't know. So to me, it seems kind of like the majority is trying to stick to the 40 acres. I'm pretty confident that overall our numbers are going to increase. I know that we've been, working with community development, and we've been very aggressive in trying to find other properties to build up, and not build up, but build some single family homes and try to aim for some more residential areas. So I'm pretty confident that we can, that we have that our barrier will increase, even though it's decreased due to some projects coming off our list. But at this point, I'll hand it over to our staff.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes, Councilmember Hernandez.
Thank you. Ron and Ben, just for my clarification, if we were to go with, with the 40 units and not provide, the other tiers, does that turn away developers, say for our downtown corridors and other areas? And I say that in the sense of, does it provide them, will they feel confident that, if they want to go something higher, do they believe that they can do that through the council process? Or how will that work? So say if we stick with the 40 and somebody wants to do a 45 or whatever, or another number like that, what's the process that they would require to seek that approval or change? What's the steps that have to happen on the city side and on the council side?
Yes, Councilmember Hernandez. So essentially what that means is we're, to be frank, we're back at the drawing board. We would have to make amendments, after, considerable time and the grant money that were awarded to us to perform this specific plan, and it being so new, we'd end up going back to the drawing board and making amendments would add additional cost to the specific plan to allow for more than 40 units per acre. So we would have to go through a specific plan amendment. Further environmental review wouldn't be needed, and any associated CEQA documentation to allow for that increase. So there isn't anything built into the plan. That's why it's important that we come away with a density for the downtown, so that way we can provide that clear direction to the development community.
Ron, if I may, and the question I think is about an individual project that would come in. So just a couple of scenarios. Yeah. If an individual project came in that was looking to do affordable housing, they would get the density bonus to be able to get up higher. If it was a market rate project, there is not a clear mechanism to allow them to achieve a higher density. You can't do a variance for density. So there's no clear option other than, like Ron said, they can come back in and try and do a full amendment to the specific plan, or some kind of overlay, if that's an option, to allow that to activate.
Thank you. Thank you both. Again, to my colleagues, I would ask that we, consider adding a tier or a process, because again, I would never add a project that adds more issues to our community. However, if we are able to resolve those, because I do believe we can resolve parking issues, and that is something that, should a developer come in, we can share with them that, this is a major concern and this is how they have to fix it. So we can dictate what that solution is for them, as we look towards parking and traffic flow and other things of that nature. But if we resolve something, now or in the next, for foreseeable future, we're basically telling developers, do not come to Baldwin Park towards our specific plan, at least the market rate people, because there's no process, as it was mentioned, for them to go through. It would be a very costly and very time-consuming expenditures of time and effort on their end to maybe not get anything. Whereas if we do a 50 unit, or whatever the case may be, as it's been outlined, that at least provides a process, and the process is again, dictated by us with our approval. And if certain issues haven't been resolved or new issues come about that we're not aware of today, that still again provides the control of what is built in our city through the various levels and functions that's been outlined. So I would ask that we can consider that, because again, this is the document that's going to speak to what we may be able to do over the next few years. And just relying on a couple other mechanisms of an overlay or an inclusionary housing ordinance, those are all great, but again, they're not clearly defined at this time, and we're trying to define something in the future. So in order to do something, we got to do something now. Otherwise, what we look at in the future, we may pass the boat or pass the opportunity to do what we're trying to do with a specific plan. And more importantly, those other two mechanisms that I mentioned with the overlay and the IHO, those are other things that then we can look at as a complementary tool for the specific plan. So it's not to say that those other tools are going to replace this. In fact, I think it won't do that. But I do believe those tools will complement what we're trying to do with the specific plan that's in front of us. So that's why, again, I urge for my colleagues to reconsider, because again, by not doing that and just doing the minimum, I think that that's going to prohibit us from doing potential other developments in the future, regardless. And then the only way that's going to happen is pure, affordable 100% rate. And that's fine. I believe in that, but I do also believe that part of activating the downtown area is that we need, a mixture of incomes. And if we have the IHO implemented, that will help complement our efforts as a whole. So, we're able to, do all the great things that we're trying to achieve in the downtown core corridors and the edges. Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Garcia.
thank you. So I appreciate Councilmember Hernandez's comments, and it's actually along the lines of what I was mentioning earlier and what El Monte has done with their transit-oriented development, where they allow a certain acre per unit by right. In our case, we're all looking at 40. We're all saying the same thing at 40. But then they are willing to consider, at least in El Monte, up to 80. I'm not saying that we would do that here, but even if it's up to 50 or 60, that amount, let's say between the 40 and 60, that would come back for city council review and approval if that's what we decided. And like Councilmember Hernandez said, it actually allows a developer to come to us in the future. Let's say what I envision here for the Metrolink station, it's an underutilized parking lot. And if there was something that would revitalize, a project that could revitalize this parking lot, create parking, create housing, create mixed use, it could really, it could serve our community. We wouldn't even really be able to consider that project if we cap it at 40. Perhaps in the future, a specific plan could be pursued for a project like that? Ron, if we don't approve it in, let's say, okay, this Metrolink parking station, okay? Now it's currently a parking lot. If let's say a developer in the future came to us and said, we want to propose a project that provides parking, that provides retail on the bottom and housing on the top, and we want to go 60 units per acre. So in that case, would we say, sorry, we don't have a mechanism for that? Or would they be able to pursue a specific plan?
We would say, if it's affordable, you could pursue it through the density bonus. If it's market rate, you would need to do a specific plan amendment.
Okay.
Right.
So at least we'll have that mechanism moving forward.
Yeah, and
Nothing
it's been
else.
mentioned that it would be a specific plan amendment, not so much a specific plan within a specific plan,
Mhm.
but we would have to make an amendment to the existing specific plan to allow for that.
Would the amendment then amend the entire specific plan area?
Mm,
No, it does. It could just amend that
That
Metrolink
specific parcel?
station.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Yeah,
But I do agree with Councilmember Hernandez that, first of all, I think we do need to be promoting low, very low and moderate, as well as market rate housing. No different than what we have been doing. We have the senior housing that's coming in for low income. We have Telecrew across the street, an existing low income. We have Rome, which is very low, moderate income. And we have some market rate that went in out of lower density. Downtown should have a blend of these types of housing because it just contributes. It's a good synergy. It's a good synergy for disposable income, but it also provides housing for those who need it most. So, and it's along the transit-oriented district in our city. So I agree with all of you that 40 dwelling units per acre is a good cap by right. But anything that exceeds that we would be willing to consider, that makes sense, that contributes to the landscape of our downtown, we might encourage those kinds of developments if we look at a range. But that's the council, that's up to the council. And it doesn't sound like the will is there. But I agree with Councilmember Hernandez that we will deter future revitalization efforts by not even really creating a path forward. Because what happens is developers, and I worked for a developers will look at opportunity sites. If they feel that a process will be easier, time is money, in Monrovia or El Monte, then they're probably going to invest in Monrovia or El Monte and then, kind of bypass Baldwin Park. I grew up in Baldwin Park. I grew up in the 80s. And at that time, the council was very much about keeping a bedroom community. They didn't want revitalization along the freeway. They didn't want revitalization in downtown. And what that meant was we suffered in terms of infrastructure because we didn't bring in the revenues that our city needed. We got a lot of leakage, a lot of people going and shopping outside of our community. So those are the risks that we run if we are not open to future revitalization and future economic development that we may not even foresee at this moment. But if we want, if we want to keep it very controlled, that's our will, but we will be missing some economic revitalization opportunities, especially with some of these sites, like the one that we have sitting right behind us, which is completely underutilized and prime location for a wonderful project that could serve our community. And yes, it will bring in density, but in that case, I think we could consider a beautiful project. And it would be nice to have a path forward in this specific plan, which will be in place for the next 8 to 10 years to allow us to do that. But we can also cap it at 40 and just, leave it there and see what may come.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
So just to be clear, so we're thinking of the 40. The Brandy project is how many units you said? 40? Oh. 24. So that was a project and they were more than happy to come in and bring that 24 unit project. So I don't see a problem with developers coming in and bringing in 40 units, a project with 40 units. And if I understood this correctly, if affordable housing comes, they have the right to build it up to a higher number. Is that correct? So it's not like we're blocking them from not building more units within that area. We're just looking at market rate, correct? Okay, so we're not stopping affordable housing from coming in. If they happen to purchase the land, they can build more than 40. So that's why I want to go ahead and stick with the 40, because we're not stopping them from doing that if they need to, if they come and purchase the land. Brandy, I think that's the name of the project, right? They were able to build those nice homes there or condos. They were more than happy to come. I remember when they were negotiating to bring that project here. 40 units, it's a lot more. So I think we would have developers coming in trying to build something really nice in the city of Baldwin Park, yet giving the opportunity to affordable housing to come in as well. If they happen to purchase the land within the area, they could still build the number of units they want. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes, Councilmember Damian.
Yeah, Ron or Ben, if we were to stick with the 40 units and per acre, and a developer came, just like Councilmember Garcia mentioned, there was a great development proposal that we're going to come in, they were going to give us a parking. If they were to go with a specific plan amendment, any developer can do that. Even if we're capped at the 40, they can apply for that specific plan amendment. And then at that point in time, allow for that specific project to go through.
Yes, at any time, a developer that wanted to build in a specific plan boundaries could apply for an amendment. And they would essentially propose a project that we assume would be exceeding what the downtown specific plan allows, and the council would consider that proposal. If they denied it, the downtown specific plan would just stay the same. But if they approved it, in theory, let's say the metro, for example, the Metro Link, then it would almost look like a specific plan in a specific plan, because the council would have adopted this Metro Link specific plan that's inside the downtown specific plan. So essentially would look like something like that.
So in a sense, it would still come back for the council, and whatever council is in place, they're the ones that are going to decide if this amendment is going to be approved or not. So in reality, we're not really missing the boat if a great development comes up in the future and they're proposing 60 to 70 units, because they can always get their amendment approved, correct?
It could be considered. It would just be a difference in time, of course. But yeah, it could be considered.
How much?
Could I clarify one thing too? With a specific plan amendment, a developer's not going to know that the option is there. Developers assume that you have to comply with what the standards are in place. So that development is pretty unlikely to come before you. And if it does, they would have to have some pretty high level of confidence that they would end up with an approval of the project, because it's going to incur a lot of costs. Do the environmental is hundreds of thousands of dollars, and all of the changes with a lot more uncertainty means that a developer is very unlikely to come forward with such a project.
Got it. Because I mean, and we're only talking about market rate here, because if it's affordable housing, they've got the by right, and they've got the bonus density. But on the market rate, for example, the Palomera townhomes that were built up where the I guess it was a Brandy Wine development Vice Mayor Avila was speaking about, if I'm not mistaken, I believe they purchased that land for approximately $850,000 or something. They built 24 to 26 units at roughly average 569,000 a unit, they made about, almost $14.8 million off of something that they purchased for under $1 million. So the developer is still making their money and it's still making sense for them as far as that aspect goes. So to Vice Mayor Avila's point, if they have the opportunity to be able to build 40 units and they're selling them a market rate, they're going to make their money. So, I mean, some developers may get turned off by our downtown specific plan, but those that want to make the money, they know they're still going to be able to make it off of the 40 units that we allow. Thank you. That's it.
Great, thank you. So, I think everybody has good points. I just, my priority is to take care of our landscape and the culture that the city has for as long as possible. I think in the long run, having a city that's not as dense as every other city around us because they're running to it is going to make Baldwin Park stand out, and then the developers will want to come here. When you're able to build something that's not, you're not going to be able to find anywhere else in the valley. And then, to the point, I think it's, if there has to be an amendment, then, that developer is really committed to that project and they can go through it. Other than that, me personally, I don't feel comfortable, giving council the ability to vote yes or no on a project by project basis.
So just to kind of move forward with really clear direction, we just want to make sure that everything is fully understood. I don't know if Mr. Mayor, you would mind doing just kind of a straw vote, just so that we make sure everybody's going, or if you could just give us clear direction, what you'd like staff to move forward with in the specific plan, based on the consensus that you heard, to move forward with the 40 units to the acre. That's what I heard. I just want to have it come out of your mouth so that we can hear it directly and have staff move forward with the specific plan that way. Or if you'd like to do a straw vote among your colleagues, that's also an option.
Yeah, I think we can mention options A, B, or C. City Clerk, did you want to do an informal roll call? I think you just blurt out your option.
Genevieve, can you really quickly, just for all of our sakes, just quickly go over what each option A, B, C is, just so we know?
Absolutely. Yes, thank you. I apologize, it's confusing. Option A would be largely similar to the draft plan as proposed, except it would have these tiers. But you could go up to 60 units to the acre. Option B would only go up to 50 units to the acre. Both of those options would have community benefits. Option C is 40 units to the acre.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I think the way that you can pull is by saying by right. What's the acre? What's the dwelling units per acre? Yeah.
Okay. So did you want to do a little roll call?
Mayor, yes. So it would be by right 40 acres. Anything else would have to come back to council for approval unless it is 100%.
We'll just keep it even more simple than that. We'll just say the question is by right, do you agree that it should be 40 units per acre? Simple.
So I think we all agreed on the 40 acres, 40
units.
40 units per acre. I think what we're trying to decipher is if we're going to allow anything above that, or if we're just leaving it as 40 across the board.
Well, I think is Genevieve trying to get like the foundation like of the consensus here? Because I think that's where we all agree, right? They're trying to get like very clear direction from all of us.
Okay, so
it would be option C if everyone's in consensus.
40 units per acre.
So I think actually it's a little bit, I'm sorry, this is confusing. I should have broken it up in a different way, but I think it is a little bit more like, so option C is 40 units to the acre with no options to go above. Option B is 40 units to the acre, but has an option to go to 50 units to the acre. Option A is 40 units by right with an option to go to 60 units to the acre.
Let's vote. I think we could just vote on the options. Yeah.
Genevieve, I'm sorry. So option A is 40 by right and allowed 60. Option C is 40, no option to go up. What was option B?
Option B goes to 50, has 40 by right, but you could go to 50 with community benefits and council or planning commission approval. So that's the in-between option. So if you, on the screen, the option C is really just tier 1, and that's what stays for everything. Option B, you have tier 1 plus tier 2, so you could go up to 50 units to the acre. Option A has a base of 40 units to the acre by right, but you can also go up to 50 or 60 units to the acre if you comply with the community benefit.
So if I may, I think if I look at these options, I'm not seeing an exact option that I would have, gone with. So I think it makes more sense just to ask about the 40 units per acre, just for the clear direction. It sounds like, or clear direction from council. I think that's what you're looking for.
Go ahead, sorry. I think, at least what I understood, it's the option C, the 40 units per the acre is what we're looking at. Do not go beyond that.
Yeah, and so I think what Genevieve is trying to do is she's just trying to get clear direction. She just basically wants an informal roll call with every council member to just give their option, either A, B, or C. Am I right, Genevieve?
Yes, so I think because labeling them numbers might be confusing, maybe we can just say each council member can say 40 units to the acre, no options to increase. 40 units to the acre with an option to increase to 50 would be the second choice. 40 units to the acre with an option to increase to 60 would be a third choice. Or so that, to Councilmember Garcia's point, since her option isn't up there, she could explain it briefly and say what that is. And then hopefully we can be able to find a majority with the same exact one.
Got it. Okay, I'll start if you like. I'll take option 40 units to the acre with no option to increase.
Councilmember Daniel Damian,
I would do option C, 40 units to the acre with no option for an increase.
Councilmember Garcia,
I would do 40 units to the acre by right with discretionary review by the city council or greater dwelling units to the acre. Number to be determined.
Councilmember Hernandez,
I'm going to go with the same option that Councilmember Garcia just stated. Thank you.
Mayor Estrada.
I'm gonna go with the 40 units, no options to increase.
Sorry, did we hear from everybody? Did I miss?
Yes,
Yes. So that was 3 for option C and 2 for a different option. City Clerk, is that correct? 3 option C's?
yes.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much for the very clear direction. We'll work with staff and the downtown specific plan consultant to make these changes and fold this into the draft specific plan that we can bring forward to you for your review for a draft revision. We did talk a little bit about those other options and the overlay that the mayor mentioned. So I would like to touch on that last topic now, if we have a little bit more little bit more in us tonight to get a little bit more direction from you. And again, we really appreciate your time. And I went to the wrong slide, so apologies. We have two screens. I'm a little clunky tonight. I apologize. Coming to you from another state. So
Jen,
the addition.
just so I'm clear, as you move forward on the next housing policies here, are you asking for clear direction for this next step here?
What I'm asking for at this point is clear direction for what the city council would like to see us fold into the housing element as additional housing policies. So at this point, we are pretty tight with the numbers. So I wanted to have a couple of potential policies that we could look at. Because the city council said that there were certain things that you would like to be explored, we can include that in the housing element to explore these things, to move policies that you identified further, and have that in the housing element so that that's a clear track of a next housing policy to look at. So these were some of the options that we might want to include as additional to ways to meet housing goals.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. You know, as you can imagine, I just don't feel comfortable giving any direction, considering I haven't had any, I haven't received any reports from, staff, at least at this time, to understand. If you want to talk about the framework, I'm happy to do so, but I'm not going to be able to, at this point, have enough information as to give you guidance. So if there's an opportunity to do that at a later time, if staff or you can share with us when that is, then I'm happy to do so. Only once I've had an opportunity to review and do other analysis in regards to the potential new housing policies that you're about to discuss. I just want to be very clear about that.
Okay, thank you for that. And so just kind of hearkening back to what we talked about back in June, this is really just a summary of some of those other options that we presented back in June as other ways. At that time, we presented them as other ways to meet the RHNA, but we did hear from council some desire for certain things like a housing overlay that could be applied in certain locations where you would see it to be fit. So just to review those things again briefly, we talked about the potential to really incentivize ADUs in the community. These are accessory dwelling units. So those the back houses that are really kind of common in all communities throughout the San Gabriel Valley, but really trying to be more aggressive with our marketing, the different types of ADUs that could be allowed, allowing certain ones that are outside of what the state already allows. The state's pretty generous with how ADUs are allowed, but we could increase the allowance to say, also allow two-story ADUs and other ways we could be more aggressive about marketing that to really try and bump that up in order to try and increase our buffer for the RHNA. The one caveat there is that if we do that and the city's not able to meet those targets, HCD will be tracking your progress moving forward. And if we're not able to achieve the projections that we identify in the housing element for ADUs, they will be asking the city to put into place other mechanisms to really try and encourage ADUs to meet the targets we've identified. So there's the possibility that we could ramp it up a little bit, associated that with some additional marketing and efforts to push that forward. So that's an option that we can also explore if we find that our numbers are a little too tight. We'll look at that as well. We presented a couple of ideas of increasing density in existing zones. This is unlike, we didn't hear any kind of clear direction from council on these ones. Just wanted to repeat it because we talked about it before, but we didn't really hear clear direction. The other topics that we talked about were really rezoning certain opportunity areas along the freeway district. There were some sites that were looked at that it seemed to have consensus from most of the council that there was interest in potentially exploring some more housing opportunities along the 10 and in some of the industrial areas near kind of the 10-05 interchange. some of the industrial areas to the north that are also adjacent to a mobile home park. Certain spots along Baldwin Park, Ramona, or Los Angeles. We also presented the idea of looking at church parking lots and allowing for increased density there. So one of the ways that this can be done is through an overlay, as mentioned by the mayor. So we could include in the housing element to either explore or to implement a housing overlay that could be applied by developers to apply that on specific sites moving forward to provide that flexibility. So those were some of the things that we heard from council. We just wanted to kind of hear again from you if you had a sense that you would like those included in the housing element, and are able to provide us a little bit more feedback to kind of give us our direction to finalize the housing element for your review and then HCD review. We would appreciate that insight at this time. So on that point, this is kind of the second piece of what we wanted to talk about. And I know it is getting a little bit late, and we're really glad we got kind of very clear direction on the specific plan. But if any of the council members would like to share any additional thoughts that they might have on the potential for including really a housing overlay in the housing element, or any other features that you would like us to consider incorporating into the housing element, the floor is open to you.
Thank you. I'll just start this off if that's okay, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to, discuss and review all these items that you're proposing. Just again, staff hasn't briefed us as to how these all work or implement, or what the actual effects are or the impacts are. So I would appreciate for staff to provide us that information, before our next meeting, as it relates to, the rezoning, the accelerated ADUs, because I have not received anything from staff. So I'd hate to make an uninformed decision, before you're asking for something that, I don't believe staff has provided us any briefings in specific to some of these items. But I would encourage, to bring all of this back, in the future meeting. So once we have, a debrief by staff in regards to these type of items that you're looking at, we'll be much better informed as to, what and how these will impact our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. So I believe this meeting is the delay of the original meeting. I'm not entirely sure we can keep delaying these meetings at this point. Can you kind of give us a timeline?
Yes, that is correct, Mayor. So the list here that Genevieve essentially just went over, just to reiterate, these are just some of the comments that were that were shared at the June 23rd study session. So we just want to kind of mention these if you would like staff to include these in the housing element for future consideration. At that point, once we get past the housing element, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, Genevieve, these are items that the city can then move forward with further in detail studies and analysis on housing opportunities elsewhere throughout the city. So we just wanted to essentially recap some of the comments that you provided at that meeting. And if you would like us to include those, that would be a great opportunity now to include them, so that way staff at a future point can bring that back to the city for further consideration.
Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you. I do remember my comments at that meeting with regard to the housing element and RENA numbers. So that was a separate conversation than the specific plan. But I do remember asking if our RENA numbers at that time were including projected illegal ADUs. Let's say those ADUs that exist in our community that have not been permitted. And so as far as incentivizing, at least my thoughts on that would be, how do we incentivize those who have illegal conversions to then get them permitted, that they can be contributed? Oh, that's weird. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so that they can contribute to the RENA numbers. Those were my comments. Outside of that, and the ADUs, I know we previously had talked about ADUs as a larger discussion, whether we wanted to require that they're affordable or, so I don't think we've had that conversation, and maybe that's a conversation that can come back in depth at a later time.
Yes, absolutely. And Genevieve, as you're aware, the council's going to be having a study session next week, Wednesday, on Measure H, ADU incentives. At that point, we can report back to staff at that meeting, because the council is going to be briefed on incentives for ADUs. At that time, you could provide some direction that we could include in the housing element, since that discussion is going to take place next week on Wednesday. So that's an opportunity that we can use.
Ron, I think it behooves us to distinguish between the degree of finality and direction that we have from council, which applies specifically to what was just voted on earlier, or at least an indicator vote, and the timeline that we're up against. And then this comments, this themes that Genevieve just presented on the screen, those would apply more to the tenor of the report. In other words, when you say that we can work on them later, it doesn't mean later as if still trying to meet the deadline of the submittal of the housing element. You mean later, like after that is complied with. So it's whether the tenor of the report will indicate to the state. So these are categories of potential additional housing that the city will be reviewing, analyzing, or entertaining. So as opposed to still bringing those to some sort of finality and still submit the report on time. We're not saying that.
Absolutely correct. Thank you
Okay.
for that clarification.
Okay, so we're just kind of, so at this direction would be just for you to keep those items, and then once we're ready to talk about them, that's when you would bring staff reports and we have all the information in front of us to make an actual direction. Okay, well,
I have some questions about the specific plan. Can you tell us about like the non-compliance, what illegal non-compliance uses? With the, like how we plan to address
Oh, the
those?
legal non-conforming?
Legal non-conforming uses,
Yes.
yeah.
So one of the comments on the legal non-conforming section of the specific plan calls out for, so fast forward with the adoption of the downtown specific plan, obviously we'll create some non-conformities in the downtown with existing building structures. So for example, if any property within the downtown were to expand, they would be limited to a certain threshold, still continue their operation of the existing building and use. But if they exceeded that threshold, they would then have to require them to comply with the requirements, the development regulations of the specific plan. So there is flexibility there for legal non-conforming structures within the downtown and uses. Correct. Yes. So in addition to the comments that were given at the June 23rd meeting, those were we're gonna include those in the final specific plan, which are to allow for car washes by conditional use permit, drive-throughs by conditional use permit. So we're going to include those. Those are some of the comments that were given at that study session.
okay, well, I think, so currently we're at just giving you direction to pretty much bring these back with the full-on report, and then we can make decisions then, right? So I don't have an issue with that. I don't know if any other council members have any questions, comments, or concerns. Not, I think we're okay with that. And then we can move on to the next phase.
Great. Well, that is actually all I had tonight. So we've tied it up and put a bow on it. So thank you very much for bearing with me through that, and really appreciate all of your thoughtful comments, and happy to come back to you in about we'll have to look at the schedule, but I think we're coming to you in October with the draft housing element for your review. And I'll turn it back to Ron and Ben. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Genevieve. Just to summarize, so these next steps, as Genevieve mentioned, we're going to be coming back now that we have clear direction in October for the draft housing element. Meanwhile, we're going to be going back to the downtown specific plan consultant to address the direction and revising of the downtown specific plan. These two documents are going to be brought forward to the council concurrently for adoption in February 2022. So that way we meet that deadline. So we want to thank the council for all their time that you've spent on this, given your busy schedules. And want to thank Genevieve for all her time and effort in assisting us to this point. So we'll be back to the council in the next coming months.
Great. So thank you for that, Ron, and of course, Ben and the rest of the community development. And of course, Genevieve and her team. I know, these are lengthy discussions, but this 1 or 2 hours discussion is going to set the field or set the roadmap for the next 10 years, right? So thank you all for being here today. Thank you for the information. I look forward to that finished document and make sure that we can turn it in on time.
Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Garcia.
I just want to thank Ben and Ron for leading this effort and for really taking the time to have conversations with all of us, for coordinating with all of us, really taking in the input and incorporating it into the next draft. I know it's been a lot of work for you guys, and there have been a lot of priorities, especially with ADUs and some of these other pieces of state legislation coming down the pike. So I just want to express my appreciation for the work that you put into, and the time and the effort that you put into this, because I feel like it's going to be that stronger of a document, of that living document moving forward. So thank you.
Thank
you for your
you.
work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, kudos to staff. Thank you, Genevieve and the rest of the staff for walking us through this exercise, hand-holding us through this exercise. I think it's going to be fruitful in the long term. But again, thank you, Ben, Ron, for your diligence, for meeting with us early in the mornings or evenings. And again, Genevieve, thank you for your guidance, your patience, and your stewardship.
Thank you,
Yes.
Councilman.
Thank you, Genevieve. Yes, you've been a great steward. Thank you. Very knowledgeable. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So I believe at this moment we are ready to adjourn. So I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any objections? If not, meeting is adjourned. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.